Short. So I'll run this one by you. He was quite a character, a big tall man, and he wasn't afraid of no man or a horse. But anyway, he was down there on the little Van Dusen, and he was riding one horse and leading another one, and something happened to the horse pulled back behind or something, and it pulled George right over backwards, and he hit the ground, and it was froze, and it hurt him pretty bad. He said he crawled over to the side of the road, and he said he guessed he kind of resembled a digger squirrel that a logging truck had run over. And that's a story that he was he was the greatest character that I ever met in my life. He could tell stories to people. One night I went to a dance at Hayfork, and by golly, you know, there was selling booze in one end, and then there was another place there in the middle where people were gathering and sold booze there, and then the next place was a dance hall. So this man could tell a story, and he'd take a bunch of people. He never seen them before in his life, and he'd start talking, and he'd have their attention like you can't believe. And I tell you what, whenever the dance was over, we all rode up there in the back of a pickup. We went up to Hayfork and from the fairgrounds, and when we got out to go, well, George wasn't there. So we went back in that center place in that building, and there was George with 20 people in there, and he was telling a story about catching a rat down there in the Cottrell cabin down there on the bottom of the river down there in that world, and he had them people absolutely listening to every word he was saying.
Yeah. And
we had to wait till the story was over before we get him out of there. But he was a character now. Yeah. Went to a dance up there one time at Zenia in the schoolhouse that I helped build, and there was a pickup down there, and there was a stove in it. We found another rig there, and George grabbed all the cartons and stuff that he could, and he went over and he poked them down in that stove and set it on fire. And Marceline seen what we were doing, and she told on him who'd done it. So George and I caught hell over it, but it made a pretty good smoke and blaze come up out of that rig. But he was a character, George Short.
Oh yeah, I got to tell Andrew about that time. My father went over there to George Lampley, Jess Lampley's place, and going to help him mark some cattle. They did mark cattle, and Lou Legault was there, and there was a whole bunch of them there. So it come time for lunch, and so they asked Jess. Jess had some stuff there for him to eat for lunch, and they asked Jess, "Jess, have you got any of that Bohemian drip syrup around here so we could kind of use that for?" A lot of people were real heavy, you know, and they use that for kind of dessert for these people. And Jess said, "Sure." So he climbed up the ladder on the back of the house and went in there and got the 5-gallon can and brought it down, but didn't have no cap on it. So Lou Legault went to go ahead to put some in a pitcher, and here floated out a mouse. So Jess went over, got the mouse, and held him up and wrung him out like this and give it to Lula. And Lula said, "Nobody's going to eat that stuff after you wrung that mouse out of there." Yeah, yeah, yeah.